I'm Bailey Martin. I'm a Battalion Chief with Richmond Fire. I'm here today with Jalil Davis. He's a firefighter at Engine 14 on the A shift. And we're just starting a new series where basically we're meeting some of our firefighters, interviewing them. We're going to be using some of this for recruitment, but mainly just to let people kind of get to know our firefighters, hear some of their life experiences, how they came to the fire department, and some of the things they're doing inside and outside the fire department. So thank you, Jalil. You're the first one, so thanks for coming to, agreeing to do this with us. You're going to be our guinea pig, so to speak. Let's get started. So first of all, you're at Engine 14. How long have you been with Richmond Fire?
City time, 3.5 years, coming up in June. Street time, 3 years.
3 years. Where'd you start your career? What was your first station?
Station 12 on Carrying Ass.
Before we get too much into your fire career, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Just tell me a little bit about yourself before the fire department.
So I've kind of lived all over. My first home memories are the West End, Rosewood Avenue, right behind City Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
The neighborhood was very different when I was living there than it is now. And then we moved to the East End off of 9 Mile Laburnum and Jarrett Apartments. And then we lived in Central Gardens for a little bit of time, and then we moved to Hanover. And then in my adult life, I lived back in the city on Broad Street, and then I lived in Chesterfield too, right on outside of the city.
Do you live in the city now?
I live in Verona now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So you said all over, but really you mean all over Richmond?
All over the city.
Yeah, you
all
lived
over
in Richmond your whole life, pretty much. I'm the same way. I grew up, started out in the East End of Henrico, lived in, spent most of my childhood in Hanover County, and even in college, I went to Randolph-Macon, so I've only been as far as Ashland.
Yeah.
And other than that, I've always lived mostly in the East End of Henrico, but also now I live in Charles City County, just the same in that Verona area as well. So, so tell me a little bit about school. Where'd you go to high school? What'd you do before the fire department? Tell me a little bit about it.
So I went to Hanover High School, graduated from there. I played football, ran track. After high school, I went to ODU. I was there for a good time, not a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Being 18 and thrown out into the wild wasn't the best thing for me.
Did you make it to second semester?
No.
No. Okay.
Nah. So I came back home. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to college not knowing what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always said that I was probably going to be a lawyer, or the fire department was always kind of like a backup for me.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt was a lawyer. Well, no, I'm sorry, she is a lawyer. Her sister's a doctor. My mom's a nurse. My granddad retired from here.
Mm-hmm.
So
who's your granddad?
Raymond Davis.
Raymond Davis.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, just having so many different influences, I never knew could pinpoint. I just knew I liked dealing with people,
mm-hmm.
and I couldn't take the monotony of everyday 9 to 5.
So I worked with Raymond many times, transfers or different occasions. Did you ever get to come to the firehouse? You visit him at the firehouse much, or you just knew he was a firefighter?
So my first station visit was to, I wasn't young enough, I wasn't old enough to remember the old 10
mm-hmm.
on Broad Street. My uncle, he's 5 years older than me. He remembers the old 10, but I was born in 94, so I remember where it is now, Hermitage Road,
mm-hmm.
but I remember before the renovations.
Right.
So that was my first firehouse, and then just going with him to the credit union or whatever. He would come in, stop by, talk to the guys. But other than that, he talked about the fire department, but not really. It wasn't until I got older until he really started talking to me about it. And then once I said that, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, that's when he started, talk more about it. Just things about what it's like, the things you see, some of the things he dealt with in here, Um, so, you know,
What do you talk? Can you talk more about that?
just like he came in 1980,
Mm-hmm.
and so he came in, and you know, it was guys with, let's say, 15 years in, they came in 1965. So it was a huge like racial divide in the fire department. So you know, he tells me about how like all the black guys on the shift, they slept in the same bunk. They were each other's relief men, and they like drank out of the same coffee cup and all that stuff. And it was very integrated but segregated at the same time. So just talking to me about stuff like that, and then just, you know, just the actual job part of it. You know, going on the fires, and you know, once they started doing EMS in the 90s and how rough that was. And so he just gave me a little insight, and you know, I'm fortunate to have him now because he kind of is a resource, and I can kind of reach back and like, hey, this, you know, this is what I've seen, this is what happens, and can use him to like kind of pick his brain a little bit.
Mm-hmm. You know, talking about some of his experiences, we had this thing called building bridges back in the early 2000s, and it was I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in it, and a lot of that was geared to try and address some of those issues that you're talking about. Even though we had moved on, I think that there was still some hard feelings that had lingered from those days, because like you said, we still had firefighters in our department that had experienced those types of, I would say, injustices or treatment. And so to hear some other firefighters tell those kind of stories was really eye-opening to me, that in my lifetime people could be treated that way, because I'm a little bit older than you. but still, so yeah, I mean, but that's a great resource to have, you know, someone like that that's been in the fire service that can tell you a little bit about it and kind of help mentor you, I guess, and kind of tell you what to look out for, how to conduct yourself. You know, for me, I don't have anyone else in my family to really lean on in that way, so I'm sure that was pretty valuable for you.
I appreciate it. You know?
Yeah. Well, tell me about who are some of, obviously you mentioned your grandfather, who are some of the other influences in your life growing up?
So probably my grandma, honestly. I was at her house like every weekend. You know, as soon as school let out Friday, she was coming to pick me up, you know, when she got off work, and then going to her house, staying until Sunday. Now, I remember specifically like crying because I didn't want to go home. It was like, I want to stay here. And then sometimes we went to the school in the district that she lived in, so sometimes I could stay the night during the week. So my grandma for sure.
Did she live in the city?
She actually lives right outside the city in Highland Springs.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time over there as well, like Tiffany Meadows, like right near Fairfield Middle School. And then my aunt, we're very close. The one who's a lawyer, she's only 15 years older than me, and so, but we've always had like the same interests. Cause my brother was sick when I was a kid, so I spent a lot of time with my grandma, with my mom and dad, with my brother in the hospital, whatever. And so like, I just hear stories about like, you know, I got Bob Marley like on my wall. My aunt drew a picture of him, and it's her picture that she drew, and it's on my wall in my house. And my grandma tells me the only time she had to give me a spanking was because I wouldn't go to sleep because I wanted to listen to Bob Marley. And so like, that stuck. So
how old do you think you were when that happened?
I was old enough to talk, so 2-3 years old maybe. You know,
I don't think I discovered Bob Marley till I was in my teens.
Yeah, and so it is stuck. You know, Bob Marley's still one of my favorites. But now that I'm older, me and my aunt, we go to concerts together because we share some similar taste in music. You know, if a new song or something comes out that I don't think she's hip to, I send it to her through a text or whatever, and sometimes she'll be like, yeah, I already listened to it. I'm like, oh, excuse me. You know, but yeah, our relationship, you know, is real close, real tight.
That's good. So did you have any other jobs before you were a firefighter?
Yeah, I worked in I worked at Chipotle. Chipotle was my first job. That was a job I had when I got back from ODU. And then I worked there for maybe 2 years. And then I worked at Texas Roadhouse, and I worked there for maybe 2 or 3 years, something like that. And then I worked at a call center in Chester off of Iron Bridge, dealing with Obamacare and signing people up for insurance and stuff like that. I worked there for about a year. Basically, when I was in the process of getting here, I was working there, and then I got in here. I left there and came here.
That's interesting, because I was, when I got out of college, I kind of got the first job I could find, trying to make the most money I can make. I was an English major, but I found a job working for Bank of America and their call center.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for about 4.5 years, and it took me about a year there to realize, like, this is not what I want to do. You know, I wanted to sit and, you know, I'm sure if you were in a call center, you know, like all your breaks are regimented. You have to be on the phone as much as possible. So that type of environment was just not, it really turned me off to the corporate world, and maybe start looking for something, I guess you'd say, more satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's why I said, like, my first option was to go to law school. Because, like, no matter what I did, I always wanted to interact with people in some capacity. You know, whether it was, and I probably would have did criminal law, because dealing with those people, like the less fortunate sometimes, and helping them out of turn bad situations and not make them worse. You know, like I talked to my aunt, you know, yeah, somebody may have committed murder or whatever, but her goal is to not get them life or the death penalty. When now that we don't have it anymore, it's not an issue. But when, you know, when she was coming up, you still had it. So, like, some of her cases, and it was something that she could be proud of, because I basically, you know, in a way saved their life, and so they still get a chance at freedom, you know, if they're young enough.
And even, I think there's, you know, still that, even if they're guilty,
Exactly,
you still want to make sure that they get a fair shake in the process.
Exactly.
You know, that they aren't, you know, exploited in the legal system. Now, in the last year that we've had, what are the conversations with her being a criminal lawyer, kind of how have those conversations gone with everything that's been going on in our country over the last year or so?
Honestly, like, we don't even really talk about it that much, because just for me sometimes, like, it's almost like sensory overload, you know, because you know it's there, you know it happens, and then when something like that happens, it's all you see, and so it's like, there's no need to even kind of talk about it, you know. Now, sometimes I will say, hey, what do you think, you know, what do you know, when something happens and it's kind of, when it's blatant, it's nothing to discuss, but when it's kind of like, you know, I'll be like, what you think? And she'll be like, well, you know, this happened, that happened, and that happened. I was like, that's kind of what I saw, you know. So it's like, you know, but that stuff can get exhausting to talk about. So
yeah,
you know,
and I mean, especially with us having to, you know, here in Richmond having to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, you know, there was a lot of, you know, kind of soul searching over the last year of, you know, where are we? How can I help? How does that, my job being a government job and there being so much request for reform, you know, but still trying to serve our communities, to me there was a lot of, you know, questions that I had to ask myself and really evaluate how I felt about certain things. So let's talk about you as a firefighter. So what's your experience been like so far? What was your first assignment like? How was that for you? Did it meet your expectations? Was it different than what you thought it would be?
So I kind of had like no expectation. I was just going and do whatever it was that needed to be done. Like I said, I didn't know anything about 12. My only firehouse experiences were 10 and 11. And that's because my aunt lived on 29th Street, and she was kind of like the family mother. So like we all went there, and if somebody hurt themselves, you know, go around the corner and get a Band-Aid or whatever, you know. And so that was another experience too that was great because Ham was good friends with my cousin, and he would come check on my aunt and all that. And I think one of her last times coming home from the hospital, I think Eric Ross and the A shift, I think he was on the A shift, they went over there and helped her get into the house, you know, from the hospital. So they always kind of looked out for just doing a real community firehouse, like, you know your neighbors, you know. And so that was, you know, it was always just a good impression. And then they had a fire in the house, you know. And Carlos, he ran the call, and so he was like, "You related to them?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my aunt." You know, he's like, "Yeah, they had a fire in the house." I was like, "Yeah," and, you know. And so my family in the Richmond Fire Department are like almost like interconnected, in directly and indirectly. You know, just being in the city, they've been serviced. And so like being at 12, it was slow, but like I said, I had a good crew, so, you know, the time went by fast, you know, because we would get out, train, learn, you know, play and joke, you know. I enjoyed my time, but I just kind of outgrew it, you know, just being, I'm only 26, I'll be 27 in July, you know, and then the pandemic really just, you know, 12 was slow before, and the pandemic, you know, VCU, they left, the bars closed, and that was basically our call volume, you know. And once that stopped, we halted, you know. And like in the midst of the pandemic, like it would be some days where we might run one call, if that, you know, because a lot of people didn't want to go to the hospital, so a lot of people weren't calling 911.
A lot of those calls that maybe were questionable, you know, where people didn't, you know, they call 911, but they weren't really in an emergency.
Exactly, and it's like, I don't even want to go to the hospital with the coronavirus and all that stuff. You know, people saw on the news how bad the hospitals were, and they didn't want to deal with it. So it was like, it would be some days where we ran 0, you know, two calls was a good day, 3 calls and was like, oh, we're busy, you know. And so I just wanted to get out of there and see different things in the department, a different side of town, different call volume, different demographics, you know. And it's kind of like diversify a little bit just from what I saw.
So now you're Northside, right?
Yep.
It's Chamberlain and Brooklyn Park.
Chamberlain and Brooklyn Park.
So how's that been so far?
It's been great, you know. I love it. It's the perfect, I think it's like the perfect fire station, because it's not 5 or 11 busy, but it's like the quality over quantity thing, right? So, you know, people talk about, you know, you can run 20 calls all day and do nothing, or you can run 5 calls all day and do a lot of things. You know, it's kind of like that deal. You know, we run good calls. Unfortunately, I've been off or driving for the fires, but, you know, we still go to them. You know, so it's a good district, and I want to spend some time there. I don't see myself leaving anytime soon, you know.
And we've been busy, you know, since January. We've had a lot more of those types of incidents.
Yep.
So what would you say has been your most gratifying call since you've been in the fire department? Or does one come to mind?
So we went on a little streak at 12. We got 2 saves from a cardiac arrest where shock was administered in a week, and that's like hitting the jackpot. You know, I had been in almost 3 years at that point, and I was like, man, every time we do cardiac arrest, like, I mean CPR, they never make it, unfortunately. But we got 2 saves like in a week, and then maybe I was working overtime at 19 in March. And we got a save. Guy got down, like fell out of the shower, and we come in, start doing CPR. Shock was administered, and by the time we got to the hospital, he was breathing on his own. So stuff like that. That's, you know, I haven't been involved in a in a rescue, like on the fire side, anything like that. So everything's just been EMS.
But I mean, it is a great feeling when, you know, there's so much, you know, I think that's, you know, people that aren't in this job that they don't realize is there is so much negative.
Yeah.
You know, you're seeing people on their worst day. A lot of these, like you said, cardiac arrests, you're giving your best effort and they don't make it.
Oh, yeah.
Or sometimes people are gone before you get there.
Yeah.
So to do your job, you get to do your job and really make a difference.
Yeah.
That's like the best feeling.
And all three of them were, it was witnesses around.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good for them too. Because, you know, a lot of times, like, you have to tell somebody, hey, they didn't make it.
Yeah.
And it's just dealing with people's families, you know, it's tough because, like, that sucks for them. And then it's like, it's the fire department's most interesting thing ever, right? Like, you can go and run the worst thing humanly possible, and then you can go back to the station and eat dinner or go back to sleep or whatever and not even blink an eye at it, you know. And it's kind of crazy just to think about, like, the kind of how, like, the normality of it, you know. And it's like, it's not really normal, but it's our normal.
We normalize it.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like is something wrong with us? Like, what's this? You know, you know. But it's like, but it's what we do. It's what we sign up for. It's what we're here for. So, I mean, it's just. You know.
So, what would you say? So now, you know, you've talked a little bit about the influences in your life, and I know you and I've had some conversations. You mentioned that you felt like you're here because of some choices that your parents made, that maybe if they hadn't made those choices, things would be different. Can you talk about that and what that's, just to elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so I used to get in trouble a lot as a kid, like in school. You know, one, school was always kind of easy for me. So it wasn't a lack of, I think it was more so lack of stimulation. And then just some external factors that caused me to act out. But, you know, that was like in the East End or whatever. And then once we moved to Hanover, it kind of took me away from certain things. And so, like I say, like, I think moving to Hanover in a way kind of saved me, because I look at people that I used to be cool with, and they're in certain situations, and it's like, you know, I could have been with them, you know. Or you just look at just the influences and the proximity of the city and the things that, you know, people go through. And it's like, I didn't have to deal with that, you know, when she moved us. I didn't agree with it at the time, because, like, all my friends are here, you know. We moved to the county, it was like nobody plays outside. You know, the apartments that we were in, it was like perfect. It was like 5 buildings, right? It's like 5 buildings, and then in the middle of the building, in the middle of the 5 buildings was this huge field. And all the kids from the apartment complex used to come together, and that's where we played football. And it was every day, this is what we were doing. And so we moved to the county, and it was like, man, like, me and my brother, man, what do we do? You know, it's like, it's nothing to do.
Were you more like a neighborhood then?
So we moved to the apartments first, and the apartments were cool, because once we got to know people, and more people kind of moved around there, and then it was people like us, kids from the city, because it was like, I think you get like Section 8 around there, and then we lived in apartments, and there was apartments up the street, at Cold Harbor and was it Chickahominy, something like that, like in Chickahominy Bluffs, like Mechanicsville Turnpike area. And so they would come, or we would go up there. They had a basketball court, we had the football field, and so we had like neighborhood kind of games, and then these the same people that we went to school with. So, you know, we organized it in school, and it was like, all right, we gonna play y'all play us, and see who wins. And then a lot of times too, it was like these are people that we played Little League with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it was just a competition. And then we moved further into the county off of Pole Green Road. And I was like, man, it's really nothing to do out here. But by that time, I was in middle school. So I think I was in 7th or 8th grade when we moved out there. And so it didn't really bother me that much because I was so involved with sports. Like I went from, I never came home after school. So I would go from football to track. You know, it was like maybe 2 or 3 months in between, because I didn't play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 2 or 3 months in between where I came home on the bus. But then once I got to high school, I was never bored. I always had something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Especially 8th grade, because we started lifting weights and stuff January of 8th grade. And so I would go from football to weightlifting to track, and I did that all through high school. And then once I got to high school, we went to the playoffs every year. So we would play up until Thanksgiving or the first week in December, because we went to the state semis twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like 3 or 4 weeks where I was just at home, and then weightlifting started in January.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was never, you know, I was always busy. Then weightlifting turned to track. And then after track, school ended, and we kept weightlifting. And then next thing you know, it's summer and we got practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always just occupied with some type of sport, something like that, which I think was good for me because it's an outlet, you know, or just everything that I had going on.
So, you know, I think a lot of people measure success in a lot of different ways and think that, you know, if you aren't a millionaire or famous, that you aren't necessarily successful. But I can see, you know, just hearing your story and where you've come from, you've had to overcome a lot of obstacles to get to where you are. Do you ever think about, you know, what your success means, or you know, how do you feel about what you've already accomplished, or maybe even what that might mean to people that see you on a fire truck? You know, they don't know your story, but I'm sure when you're riding through the city of Richmond, there's a lot of kids that see you and look up to you.
So for me, my success isn't measured in anybody else's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's not necessarily even attached to money. It's about happiness, you know. I come to work every day. 9 times out of 10, I'm happy. 9 times out of 10, I have a good day at work. You know, just I'm outside of the calls, like just being with the people that I work with, you know, interacting with them, we have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so my success, and it's like I look at it as like I'm happy I'm here. You know, like I made it. You know what I'm saying? Like despite everything, you know, all the stupid stuff that I ever did, like I'm here. You know, so it's like I'm proud of myself. You know, and so you know, and then just riding a fire truck through the city, you know, that's a pleasure in itself. You know, having the kids see you and have somebody to look up to without even, and it don't even have to be direct, you know, just indirect, just seeing somebody that look like them. You know, I wear my hair, I got locks, you know, might wear your hair the same, whatever. It lets you know that it's tangible, you know. And then for me, being a firefighter, it's encouraging to see people that look like me in upward leadership, because it lets me know that it's tangible. So it's a whole, not necessarily a trickle-down effect, but it's a whole just thing of what you see in your sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when I ride the fire truck, I wave and just let people see me, you know. And that's, if I have time to talk to you, I'll talk to you. If not, just know that you can do it, you know. It's nothing that's, it's nothing impossible, you know. I think it's just more so of accessibility, you know. Because it wasn't for my granddad, I wouldn't have known anything about the fire department, honestly. It wouldn't have been an option, you know. And so before I got here, I applied to Henrico, I applied to Chesterfield, and that's because he told me, hey, you know, they're opening, they're hiring, you know. But ultimately, I wanted to be here, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to get, I'm not gonna say I didn't want any job, but I wanted this job more than the other jobs.
Yeah.
You know, because I am connected to the city. You know, I still got family, a lot of family that live in the city. I'm in the city often, you know, visiting family. You know, so it's no better place for me than here. You know, and I don't foresee myself leaving anytime soon. It would take a lot for me to leave the city.
Yeah.
A whole lot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're thankful to have you. You know, I certainly, you know, you've got a lot of career left in front of you, but you know, your attitude is definitely great, and you know, I appreciate you coming here and talking about some of your experiences and sharing with us, and you know, we certainly. I look forward to tracking your career as you grow through our department. So thanks for taking your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future.